Thank you everybody for joining us. Just to introduce myself, I've been in call center my whole career. So it's moving on past 20 years now, where I've started from the bottom, being an agent all the way up. I've done captive, I've done outsourced. I've moved in the various departments, support departments, very strong QA, project management, operations, call center management. So yeah, call center is my food. That's what I do. That's my passion. Through that and through my career in call center, I've also upskilled and I've qualified. I'm a COPC implementation lead. I'm currently upskilled to the latest release. COPC, for those who don't know, it's an international framework. It's a best practice contact center or customer contact center framework. I love looking at best practice. Does something work? If it doesn't work, how can you make it better? And ultimately to get customer and business improvement. And that's me.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Henriette. So let's cut to the chase on this one. This is not going to be a full-on demonstration of Callbi and Callbi's capabilities. This morning, we're focusing in on the theme, which is how do we use Callbi speech analytics to carry out 100% call assessment and scoring. And this is Henriette's speciality. So I'm going to pass you over to Henriette, and she's going to share a screen. Just before I do that, people do sometimes ask, how does this whole technology work? Without going into details, as you can see on the slide there, it's uploading of the voice files, ingestion into the cloud. We're using Amazon Web Services. A lot of the art and science is in the transcription engines, which have been developed within the AlphaWave group down in Stellenbosch. And then, of course, transcribing it into text. Thereafter, there's indexing. And as Henriette will show you shortly, building queries and then extracting the analytics and those insights, which can radically transform the way the business operates. So once again, there's an interaction, a recording, transcription. Callbi is currently English, or South African English, very important to bear that difference in mind. Afrikaans, isiZulu, and Sesotho, with other languages in the pipeline for development. So it's using those language libraries, building the queries, which you'll see in a few moments. Henriette will also show you the analytics and dashboards and the ability to export data into any other third-party, Power BI, for example, to get those deep insights into the operation. So what we've started out here this morning is a very, very simple, typical call center QA score sheet. As you can see there, call opening, we'll be looking for some compliance issues. We'll be looking at handle time, and we'll be looking at customer experience. And as you can see there, the descriptions, within those descriptions, we're looking for keywords, which Henriette will explain. And we've given it just a hypothetical rating in there. So it will enable us to use the technology to carry out 100% scan of all the calls in or out of the contact center and appropriate the scorings on it. So at this point in time, Henriette, it's over to you. If you would open up your screen share and fire up Callbi, and the floor is yours.
Okay, excellent. So everybody, like Rod has shown you, we've done, for purposes of today's demonstration, it's a very basic scorecard. I know obviously it gets a lot more intricate and you get a lot more sections and more things that you look for. But in the essence of keeping it short and simple and to bring home the point of how you can score using queries, we decided to just keep it simple and to the basics for today. So what you see in front of you, this is Callbi. I'm not going to take you through the whole Callbi. I actually want to take you through how you take your QA scorecard and those checkpoints that we've looked at today and how you now can build a query. Like Rod has explained, and I always explain to everybody, in a nutshell what Callbi does, if you think about the lady sitting in a courtroom typing the whole conversation to ensure that you've got a written text. This is basically what happens with your call recording. So whatever was spoken word has now been translated into written text. And a query is basically where you write the formula or the request for Callbi to go search through those text transcripts to then look for specific words and phrases. So to bring it back into your QA and your normal QA process, currently you would probably have agents, a human resource, sitting, listening for words and phrases. Now with Callbi, when you write the query and it's 100% of all your calls that's been transcribed, Callbi can search through millions of calls, and I've seen it, where we've got over 3 million calls, where once you write a query, it's within a couple of minutes that it will look through those calls. It would flag for you wherever a word or phrase is picked up or wherever it is then not picked up. So I'm going to take you through the process, but the beauty is that no longer do you need to sit and listen to understand whether something was done, but rather now you can start focusing on where you need to coach or train or improve or do something, because you can flag your outliers without human intervention in terms of listening and spending time to try and assess. So in front of you, you'll see this is just your dashboard view, but I'm going to take you into the queries. You'll see that I've already started building some of those. I mean, looking at the call opening, all the various things they need to do. What I'm going to show you is just a simple query. I'm going to build the one for calls are recorded. So just so that you can see the process as well. There is, so that you know, there is a process of query verification and accuracy. I know that's always everybody's question. There is a process that you will go through once you've built a query, just to ensure that you are comfortable with the accuracy, that it doesn't flag falsely. Obviously for today, I'm not going to go through the process because I want to demonstrate the QA functionality. So very basic query building. What I'm going to show you today, let's build one for the calls are recorded statement. So we're going to give it a name, compliance calls are recorded. Just going to give it a short description. Let's say the agent informed, and apologies for the spelling, it's because I'm thinking faster than I'm typing. Agent informed customer that calls are recorded. Now in here is where you start adding those words or phrases related to the statement or related to what you are looking for that should have been said within that conversation. Now obviously here what we would be looking for is calls recorded. You would see with Callbi it allows you to have certain words in between, phrases in between, up to 4 words. So you can decide, obviously, as you go into the more complex query building, you'll add more and use exact, etc. For now, like I said, I'm keeping it basic. I'm going to add a phrase, call recorded. Related to that could, for instance, be for security purposes, which would have been part of that same statement. And I'm just going to add one more for quality purposes. Now, obviously, you would add whatever is related, and you would refine the query as you go through your accuracy process. But just to show you, now that we've added these and you save your query, you'll see at your bottom, it now calculates your results against all of your calls. So what Callbi is doing now, it's looking through all those text transcripts for one of these words or phrases. Now you will see at the bottom, it's going to now show us the result, and what we can see is currently based on this query. Out of the 35 calls that we currently have in the training instance that I'm using for you today, 77% of those contained one of these words or phrases. Now there is a process where you can go through it very easily, where if you click on the call, it will take you straight into that transcript and it would highlight for you exactly that one spot where it was said. So this is also where you can verify, or where a QA resource can hit straight to that spot. They can go listen, they can mark, or they can do what they need to do. So that's just in an essence, the query building side. Similarly to how you can build a positive query to look for something that is there, you can also flag calls where it isn't there, so where it isn't present. Now, obviously this would help you where you need to flag agents, where you need to train or coach or do something. So like I've said, once you can also, as you flag things with words or phrases in it, I'm going to show you because I've already built the negative or inverse queries, but you can also have queries that looks for where it is not there. So look, for instance, here, compliance negative, which I've named it no calls recorded statement. So you'll just see in here, and this has been built out a bit more, but it would now look for calls that does not contain that statement. So without further ado, I'm going to take you into the actual dashboard and scorecard, because this is now where you start scoring your calls and you start seeing QA percentages. Now going into the dashboards, and I'm going to take you back just to think back to that Excel sheet we had, where you've got a rating, you've got a check, and it then calculates a percentage based on what was passed or what was failed. Now I'm going to just create a new scorecard layout for you under here. Callbi is very user-friendly, and you will see as you use it and you start getting used to it, it's almost intuitive. It's not like something where you need a degree to actually work it. So you need to be trained once and you go through the process. And then you can start building your stuff and play around with it, and you'll see the outputs. So in here, I'm just going to say example, and let's build a compliance QA scorecard. So let's look at the compliance section for now. Under your type, and this is where the scorecard, you have an actual selection to select a scorecard type. You can also group it by agent or by team if you then have that data available as part of your call and metadata file upload. So I'm going to group this one by agent. We want to see a scorecard. Now here is where you now basically build that Excel sheet, but where you add each query which would be relevant to the scorecard that you are building. So you can have various scorecards, like I've got here. You've got a compliance, you can have a customer experience, you can have negative scorecards, positive. I'm going to build a positive. So in here, let's add the compliance queries. Firstly, did they ask security questions? And like I said, there's not a lot because we're keeping it short. Did they confirm date of birth or ID? And there is one more compliance. Calls are recorded. Now in here, that rating, which you typically would get, some are more important than others. Here you can either input the percentage weighting, or you can input a scores system like we had on the Excel example. So let's make it just for purposes of now 5 and 3 and 5. We are in the process as well of adding a critical flag indicator. Which would obviously be, I mean, if your critical fails, it would then indicate on your scorecard. At the moment, it's not yet there, but it is on the roadmap currently being developed. So now that you've added your queries, you've built your card, let's save it for you. It's created your scorecard, and what you will see on your scorecard, grouped by agent. As per your filter, you've got a way to filter. So if you only want to look at a specific week, a specific month, only specific agents, specific teams, or any of these additional fields, you've got available to go look for it. So for instance, on a call outcome, which helps a lot, if that is added as your metadata, is if you only in an outbound environment want to score actual sales calls, you will filter on sales. Or in collections, you only want to look at promise to pay calls, examples like those. But you would set your filter. Your scorecard then shows you every single call that matches that filter. And this is what we talk about, 100% of calls being assessed against that query. So it would show you the number of calls included for that agent. It also then, as you scroll to your right, would show you a column for each of your queries or checks as per your checklist. You'll see the weighting is calculated based on what you input as a rating for weighting. And under there, it shows you the percentage of calls that positively matched the query. So in QA speak, or in QA terms, this would be your percentage passes for the check. And based on your weighting, it would calculate your overall percentage score for that call population. So very easy here to immediately flag outliers. If you've gone through your query process, your accuracy process, you're comfortable and confident with your query, you can immediately start focusing on outliers. Or here we can immediately see, hang on, something is wrong around security questions, or the date of birth, they're not asking it. So this immediately feeds back into your training, new take-ons, your processes, also coaching, flagging agents, because if you now click from a scorecard, it takes you into your list of calls and it opens up the specific calls for that agent that you can then go into. You can open the call, you can listen to it, you can train on it, and you can coach on it. So that was building a positive scorecard. I'm just going to show you one more thing, how you can also flag, like I've said, where agents are not doing specific things, which makes the process so much easier, where people can now focus on going in on the list and coaching and effecting change and improvement instead of listening to calls to find the agents. So I'm going to build one negative card for you. Let's make this a call list. Example, to say that calls are recorded, not mentioned. Now remember, this is where I've shown you the inverse or the negative query. So I'm going to create a call list grouped by agent. I want to see number of calls. Now I'm quickly just going to set my filter. I want to see calls per agent that matches the query. For compliance negative, no calls recorded. Obviously, again, you'll set your filters, you'll do whatever you need to do to get to that population and sample you want to get to. But here we can see only one agent currently that's been flagged that hasn't done on any of their calls. And now if you click again, it takes you into your call list for that agent with all those calls where they did not do what they were supposed to do. So that was everything from my side. I said I was going to keep it short and simple and sweet. I would like to rather allow more time where there's any questions or anything else, Rod, that you would want to discuss. But I think it's the basics is you can take your QA checks wherever there is something that must be mentioned and that must be said on that call, you can build a query for it. There's a verification and accuracy process behind it, which makes it scientific. You know it's true. If you're comfortable with that, you can build your scorecard. You can have a percentage score. You flag the outliers by means of automatic assessment. And in that way, your QA can now start spending more valuable time. Instead of listening to calls, they can now start coaching and training and listening for other things and more strategically. You'll see also within Callbi, any call that you work on, and I almost call it like a post-it. If you think about a post-it note, you've got the ability to leave a note on a call where anybody else can then use that note to go back to the call, to filter on the call. So I'm going to show you. Here you go. Let's just add a test tag on this one. Let's go say I'm going to create a tag. So you can create your own tags, or these tags that has been created that you can select from. For this, I'm just going to say a demo tag. I've created that tag. You can tag a call with as many tags as you need to. So if you need to flag it for training, Lee, I see you've asked a question around escalation processes. If those tags are added in there and you've got the process where you know somebody needs to search according to those tags, they can filter on those tags and it gets escalated. So they can then take action where they need to. So it's an operational process you'll need to train on your coaches or training, but they can use tags to flag these calls. So let's just add that demo tag. Demo tag, I'm adding it. You'll see now that it's been added, you can use these tags in your filters. You can filter according to tags. You can use it in your queries. You can use it to segregate, slice and dice. So if we go to the calls and we use the filter, and you'll see under calls, the filter, there is a space where you can now filter according to tags. So that's the tags. It's leaving a post-it note for later reference or for categorization or for escalation that you can use it. We also use it in the accuracy process, which obviously I'm not going to focus on for today.
What is the transcription accuracy against the languages available? I'm going to ask our specialist in here, Corey Springer, to actually answer that offline, but we are getting accuracy levels up to 70, 80%. On South African English, Afrikaans, isiZulu, and Sesotho at the moment. Now, there's a further way of enhancing that accuracy, and that's Callbi has a facility to build custom language directories. In other words, if there are particular words and phrases in your industry and your business, you would instruct Callbi to, for example, if the example that we use is, if a typical transcription would take the word my way as my and way, but those of us in the industry and as customers, we know that my way is an insurance company. So we would teach Callbi certain words and phrases to link them and to do those transcriptions. That increases the accuracy level. But we will certainly get back to you with very specific information about that. Do supervisors have direct access to their agents' calls only? And can they listen and coach but not do any editing?
At the moment, yes, we've got the functionality to either be an administrator, or if you're not an administrator, it's like a read or view access only. that prohibits or stops them from being able to edit anything. I mean, obviously, and you'll understand, you don't want everybody to have access to building queries, because that's your more analytical side. You'll have 1 or 2 people, maybe 3 people that you've trained up to ensure your accuracy, and then your team leaders can view. You can go create separate layouts for every team leader. So they don't need to access anybody else's layout. They can just go straight into their own layout. So you can have team leader name, and you can set it up for them to only view their own calls and what they need to view.
Can Callbi be integrated with existing systems, for example, Microsoft Dynamics, etc.? The answer to that is absolutely. There's an open APIs, easy in, easy out. Henriette, if we just show on that one of the dashboard cards how easy it is for us to either export dashboards or the summaries either as PDF or as CSVs, and take that straight into any one of your third-party analytics tools, Power BI. So if you just show how those little buttons.
Okay. Thanks, Rod. So very easy. And like I say to everybody when I train, wherever you see the 3 dots, always click on it. It invites you to click on it because it means there's something for you to do. If you click on it, you always get the functionality to download. So where it is something like a picture view, it would download currently into PDF. Any of your call lists where you've got details like this, like Excel, if you click and you download, it downloads as a CSV file. Now this then obviously, as you know, would open up as Excel. I'm not sure if it's going to show now because I think I only shared my normal screen, but it opens up similar to an Excel spreadsheet. So I always say I love Excel. I'm old school like Excel. There you can look at doing other analysis and using that information for something else. I also know, Rod, like you've mentioned, there is API integration, which is possible, but that's as far as I know. I'm putting the disclaimer again, I'm not the techie, but I know you can integrate via API.
Excellent. We've got a little bit of extra time. Henriette, I wonder if we could go a little bit backwards. There's an aspect of Callbi which I think is really important, particularly when we start looking at drilling down, and that's the use of metadata in the analytics. So if we just talk about how we upload voice files in tandem with a selection of metadata. If you expand on that slightly.
Okay, what I'm just going to show you, what you'll see in front of you is your list of all your calls and transcripts that's currently active and available within Callbi. So you'll see in how the list works, you get every line is an actual call recording that has been transcribed, and then every column added to it is the data or metadata associated to that call. Now, Callbi has standard fields. So when you upload the recording, you upload the recordings, and there's also a CSV metadata file that you upload together with those recordings that links back to the recording. Now, there's standard fields, for instance, the time, if you've got agent name in there, you can add agent extension, issue link. I actually also want to touch on the duration columns. Please remind me, Rod, because this is something I also think it's really nifty. But then it also has, there you'll see your tags at a glance, any team, so you can add team manager, line manager, call center manager. You also have up to 10 custom data fields. So anything that's not standard, if you want to add anything else, for instance, call reason, direction of call, inbound, outbound, call outcome, this then allows you when you start filtering or building dashboard cards and graphs, if you've built a query, that query is probably not applicable to every single call. And it's the example that I've given that on a sales environment, you only want to QA sales, perhaps, and not interested. So you're not really worried about the callbacks or the voicemails or the anything in between. So that's where the metadata comes in, and it really helps if you are able to add as much metadata as you can into that, because it would help you filter and again, slice and dice into the specific population that you are looking at. But that's the metadata.
As well, Henriette, and just to share with the participants, we had a very interesting workshop yesterday, an internal session. We were looking at what other data could we put into those metadata fields. And it literally runs to dozens and dozens, but some very interesting ones we were discussing with, for example, in the collections industry or profession, We'd be looking at the book, at the matters at hand, the call disposition, very important in there. We also started looking at, we could interface perhaps with an HR system and get the agent's tenure. Is a young, inexperienced agent, how they're performing against agents who've been with the organization much longer. So this concept of building the metadata fields alongside the transcription fields and how we use those adds immensely to the power of Callbi. Then you wanted to look at the duration column, and while you're doing that, Tim, won't you also address that wonderful world of the sounds of silence?
This is exactly what I wanted to chat about, and that's why I thought I want to show this. And on the example QA scorecard we did in Excel on your presentation a bit earlier, we referred to the handle time. So all those questions looking at handle time, did the agent deal sufficiently with the call? Were there silences? Were there things like that? Now, a very nifty thing that's built in Callbi is it automatically already calculates for you. You'll see these columns. Now, I always say the beauty of this is without even having been trained on building a query, you can start using Callbi to address inefficiencies. So in Callbi, you will see there's a total duration column. Now, this is the total duration of the recording from start up until end. You then also have in there, Callbi calculates your conversation duration. Now, conversation is regarded as anywhere where there was words being said. So if there was music playing in the background, silence, background noise, it wouldn't transcribe, and that would be regarded as silence. Now, obviously, the difference between the two would be that silence, and it calculates that as a silence percentage. Now, here, again, we all know that silence points to inefficiencies. It's either product knowledge, the agent was looking for something, they couldn't answer, they were looking through a knowledge base, having their hand raised, waiting for on-floor support, or there's a system issue, especially now with a lot of work from home, where there's network lag, latency issues, they're waiting for the system to return, or it's agent behavior. So similarly, as part of that silence, Callbi also calculates what part of the silence happened at the end of your conversation. Now, this is after the last word was transcribed or was written or said, up until the recording was ended. Now, again, this very much points to wrapping issues, notes at the end, or agent behavior, where an agent does not want to end the call because it means they don't need to take or make the next call. So very easy, these columns you can toggle, or you can build cards, and I'm going to show you, you can build actual dashboard lists that looks at certain thresholds. I'm just quickly waiting for it to open up. That would then flag your top agents where there is a very high percentage. And let's quickly build a card for you and you'll see how easy it becomes. So let's edit a card. Let's edit it to say we want to see calls with silence more than 40% for this card. We want to group it by agent. We want to see number of calls. I'm not sure if you're going to have it in here because I think because of the demo calls, there might not be a lot. If we now filter, you select your filter to only flag calls where the silence percentage was 40% or higher. If we now select, it would show you, you'll see as I put the filter a bit down, I think there might not be a lot of high silences. Let's make this calls with 5% or more, or 10%. I just want to show you the effectiveness. It will now show you per agent a list of calls where there's very high silences or where there's very high duration of silences. Similarly, you can build a card where you can look for very high post-conversation silences. So again, instead of now hoping on your random call sampling that you're picking up on silences or where they're not speaking, you now have 100% of your calls where it gets calculated. So that was the silences and the sounds of silence. And why it's so important, because it immediately points towards efficiencies, product, knowledge, training, and agent behavior.
How does the software integrate with the on-site call recording platforms, and where do these recordings sit? It's very simple, is Callbi doesn't need to integrate technically into the existing call recording solutions. You can have any solution you like. as long as we are able to export unencrypted recording files, along with and in parallel the metadata with those calls. So those calls are uploaded into AWS in Ireland. You can set up automated routines to, for example, export your calls once a day, or for that matter, every hour. And literally within 15, 20, 30 minutes, the analytics becomes available to the person doing the building and using the queries. So we don't need to integrate into existing recording systems. We just need those files. The other question that comes out fairly often is about accuracy. The Callbi has an algorithm that separates the two parties, speaker and agent, for example. It does that through its own algorithm if it's a mono recording. First prize is to get a stereo recording, which gives you 100% speaker separation. So I hope that answers your question there. We would certainly like to have a one-on-one with you, Jason, and my colleague Corey Springer. I'll be delighted to do a full-on demonstration and get into some of the technicalities as well.